They say you can't outrun your past, but a man named Leonard Rayne Moses managed to do it for nearly 50 years. In today's video, we'll look at the story of Moses, including why he was convicted, how he escaped, how he evaded capture for so long, and the incredible way that he was finally apprehended.
Timothy McVeigh was arrested by local authorities.
That's where the guardrail, at the end of the guardrail.
It was like a black hole. It was like like a crack. And everything that fell into that crack just disappeared.
On April 4th, 1968, civil rights leader Martin Luther King was assassinated. What followed was a wave of civil unrest across the nation. On April 5th, disturbances erupted in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and lasted until April 11th. Over 100 businesses were looted or burned, and many buildings were set ablaze. During the first day of riots, a 15-year-old named Leonard Rayne Moses got involved and was seen outside of a home with a group of youths drawing a white chalk mark on the ground. The following evening, the group returned to the home and threw Molotov cocktails towards the home, created by filling soda bottles with gasoline taken from abandoned cars and placing wicks in the bottles, which were lit before throwing them. Moses was helping throw the cocktails when one went through the window. The woman inside the home, 72-year-old Mary Amplo, was watching television when the cocktail entered the living room and landed on her lap, setting her on fire. She was severely injured with burns on over 55% of her body. Mary Amplo died 3 months later of her injuries. After an investigation, the police went to interview Moses, who lived at the Auberly Home for Boys, McKeesport, Pennsylvania. They decided to arrest him. During the police ride to the station, the police read him his rights, and after offering to further discuss these rights, he replied, "I know my rights, I know my rights." He was booked and fingerprinted. During the trial, a major point of contention was whether Moses, being only 16 years old, was old enough to knowingly waive his right to counsel and understand the implications of such a decision. Ultimately, the judge allowed the charges to go forward, and a jury convicted the young Moses of murder. In 1969, he was sentenced to life in prison before his 18th birthday. Shortly after he began his sentence, his grandmother passed away, and Moses was allowed a short furlough to attend her funeral. He was handcuffed and escorted by 2 armed guards. When the time was right, Moses punched one of them in the abdomen and bolted for the side door, quickly disappearing among the heavy sidewalk traffic. 3 shots were fired at Moses, but the guards did not believe they hit him. Moses made a run for it and was quickly placed on the FBI's most wanted list. Billboards shot up throughout the country with his face, but no leads materialized. A $10,000 reward was being offered for information that led to his recapture, but Moses seemed to have vanished off the face of the earth. Eventually, the case went so cold that authorities all but gave up. However, the case was reopened in 2016 as the FBI began to follow clues that Moses was alive, well, and working somewhere within the United States. They followed over 2,000 leads, but were still unable to find Moses, an obviously smart and resourceful individual. Where was he? Moses had moved to Michigan, where he was living as Paul Dixon. He was working as a traveling pharmacist and was even licensed since at least 1999. He had evaded authorities for nearly 50 years. He was obviously not a person who was a natural criminal. He was able to keep his head low, pay his bills, and was likely to never be found until he made a critical mistake. In late 2020, the manager of a CVS store in St. Clair Shores, Michigan, caught who he knew as Paul Dixon pocketing about 80 hydrocodone pills while working in the pharmacy. Hydrocodone is an opioid used to treat pain as a cough suppressant. Cost of the pills that he attempted to steal added up to around $43. Dixon offered to return the pills, but the manager reported him to the authorities. The decision to steal opioids is what brought everything crashing down for Leonard Rayne Moses. He was taken to the police station for a mugshot and his fingerprints were taken. Even at this point, Moses probably thought there was a good chance that he would not be identified. Unfortunately for him, the FBI had developed a system called NGI, the Next Generation Identification, which helps combine all fingerprints and criminal history reports throughout the country into one massive database. When law enforcement entered Paul Dixon's fingerprints into the system, they were shocked to see the match that came up on the screen. Paul Dixon was Leonard Rayne Moses, the young 16-year-old who was convicted of killing Mary Amplo in 1968. It's these new advances in technology that the FBI must continue to identify and use to make sure those who commit crimes are brought to justice, said Michael Christman, FBI Pittsburgh special agent in charge. Once Moses was identified, the FBI Detroit Fugitive Task Force went to his home and arrested him. Moses did not resist, likely realizing his mistake and that he had a great run. Nearly 50 years on the lam. He was extradited back to Pennsylvania, where he will continue his life sentence. "We've never forgotten about the case," said Allegheny County Sheriff William Mullen. In the end, Moses enjoyed 50 years of freedom, and there are no reports of him harming anyone during this time, meaning that young 16-year-old kid very likely would have gone on to live a long and successful life had James Earl Ray not gunned down Martin Luther King Jr. on that horrible day in April of 1968. Of course, that's no excuse for making the decision to throw Molotov cocktails towards a home with innocent people inside, but I can't help but wonder what Moses' life would have been like had he never participated in the riots during that terrible time. Ultimately, he did gain nearly 50 years of freedom, but now Moses has to answer for the death of an innocent woman way back in 1968. Thank you so much for checking out today's video. I hope you all enjoyed it. Let me know your thoughts on Moses. Did he deserve life in prison as a 16-year-old who was caught up in massive unrest after a civil rights hero was assassinated? Are you glad he was able to gain 50 extra years of freedom? Or is he a murderer who should not have even been allowed to attend his grandmother's funeral for fear of a possible escape? Put your thoughts down below, and please hit that subscribe and thumbs up button, and look forward to more stuff that happened in the near future.